House Resolution 65 by Chairman Halsey, a resolution to expel Justin Jones from his seat as a member of the House of Representatives of the 113th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, elected by the 52nd Representative District. Whereas Article 2, Section 12 of the Tennessee Constitution provides that each House may determine the rules of its proceeding, punish its members for disorderly behavior, and with the concurrence of 2/3 expel a member, but not a second time for the same offense, and shall have all the other powers necessary for a branch of the legislature of a free state. And whereas all members of the House of Representatives must comply with the permanent rules of order of the Tennessee House of Representatives of the 113th General Assembly, including preserving order, adhering to decorum, speaking only with recognition, not crowding around the clerk's desk, avoiding personalities, and not using props or displaying political messages. And whereas during the House floor session, 19th legislative day on March 30th, 2023, Justin Jones of Davidson County, along with Gloria Johnson of Knox County and Justin J. Pearson of Shelby County, did knowingly and intentionally bring disorder and dishonor to the House of Representatives through their individual and collective actions. And whereas at approximately 10:49 a.m., Representative Jones and his colleagues, having gathered at Representative Johnson's desk, moved in unison to the well and began shouting without recognition. And whereas once gathered in the well and called out of order, Representative Jones and his colleagues proceeded to disrupt the proceedings of the House of Representatives from approximately 10:50 a.m. until approximately 11:42 a.m. And whereas during this time, Representative Jones and his colleagues shouted, pounded the podium, led chants with citizens in the gallery, and generally engaged in disorderly and disruptive conduct, including refusing to leave the well, sitting on the podium, and utilizing a sign displaying a political message. And whereas during this time, Representative Jones and Representative Pearson used the bullhorn to amplify their protestations, and whereas these actions were done in open session in the presence of and in witness by the members and staff of the House of Representatives, whereas it appears to be satisfaction of this body that Representative Jones's conduct on March 30th, 2023 constitutes disorderly behavior and justifies expulsion, and whereas such disorderly behavior on the part of Representative Jones reflects adversely upon the integrity and dignity of the House of Representatives of the state of Tennessee, places a cloud upon the actions of this honorable body, and is inconsistent with the duty of a member of this body, and where it is deemed that the best interest of the people of the state of Tennessee and this body for Representative Jones to relinquish his seat as a member of the House of Representatives. And whereas Representative Jones has been given advance notice of the contents of this resolution and has been afforded the opportunity to debate the resolution on the floor of this House prior to its passage, now therefore be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 113th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee that pursuant to the authority under Article 2, Section 12 of the Tennessee Constitution, this body hereby expels Justin Jones from his seat as a member of the House of Representatives of the 113th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, elected by the 52nd Representative District for disorderly behavior occurring on March 30, 2023, and declares the 52nd Representative District seat vacant. Be it further resolved that copies of this resolution be prepared and forwarded to Justin Jones, the legislative body of Davidson County, the Honorable Bill Lee, Governor of the State of Tennessee, and the Honorable Trey Hargett, Secretary of State.
Representative Jones, you have 20 minutes for your opening, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The world is watching Tennessee. The world is watching Tennessee. Because what is happening here today is a farce of democracy. What is happening here today is a situation in which the jury has already publicly announced the verdict. Just yesterday, the House Speaker took to national news to condemn us and call for expulsion before any evidence was presented, before any trial happened. And so what we see today is just a spectacle. What we see today is a lynch mob assembled to not lynch me, but our democratic process. But it will not stand, because no lie can live forever. Colleagues, the video you showed a few moments ago, I want to say thank you, because it showed for the world the ridiculousness of the claims that what we were doing merit the ultimate punishment of expulsion. Mr. Speaker, I represent 78,000 people. And when I came to the well that day, I was not standing for myself, but I was standing for my constituents. And the thousands of Tennesseans gathered in this Capitol demanding that this body act. But most particularly, I was standing for those young people. Those young people, many of whom come from my district, many of whom can't even vote yet, many of whom are disenfranchised, but all of whom are terrified by the continued trend of mass shootings plaguing our state and plaguing this nation. And so that is why I walked up to the well. I walked up to the well because you were pushing my people back. We brought a megaphone because you cut our people off and you cut their representatives off from the microphone time after time after time after time after time again. And there comes a time where people get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so my colleagues, I say that what we did was act in our responsibility as legislators to serve and give voice to the grievances of people who have been silenced. Article 2, Section 27 says that any member of the House, any member of the Senate has a right to dissent from and protest against legislation that they know to be injurious to the people. The inaction of this body when it comes to the crisis of mass shootings is injurious to the people. The obedience of this body to special interest groups like the NRA is injurious to the people. The proliferation of guns that you promote in this state is injurious to the people. And so we had no other choice but to get our dissent marked for the journals. The next day, I was shocked to get messages, shocked to get copies of articles that House Speaker Cameron Sexton went on national television to lie to the world and say that what happened in this well was an insurrection. What happened out in those halls was an insurrection. I was shocked to have the Speaker of the House condemn mothers and children and grandmothers and parents and concerned citizens, clergy, lie on them and say that they were violent insurrectionists. And I think that he owes the people of Tennessee an apology. Because at no point was there violence. At no point did we encourage violence. In fact, what we were doing was calling for the end of gun violence that is terrorizing our children day after day after day, and all we offer are moments of silence. It is in that spirit of speaking for my constituents, of being a representative of the people, that I approached this well on last Thursday, breaking a House rule, but exercising moral obedience to my constitutional responsibility to be a voice for my people, to be a voice for the Tennesseans who you choose not to listen to because of those NRA checks that are so hefty in your campaign funds. There comes a time where people get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so I came as a representative to this well. And so today, we are brought to here, where members are responding in the most extreme measure, not because of what we did, but because by breaking the quorum, we broke the glass of your false power for the world to see. We broke the glass of this chamber that someone called sacred. One of the members on the other side of the aisle was in tears and said, "I've never seen such a breach of this sacred chamber." And I thought to myself, that representative has obviously never read history. Because is it in this chamber, if you walk around this Capitol, you'll see bullet holes when representatives got into conflict. You'll see duels take place on this House floor, debating whether people like me should be treated like equal citizens under law. This is not a temple. This is a place where we're supposed to wrestle for our democracy and wrestle ideas and give voice to 78,000 constituents each of us represents. But for so long, this body, drunk with power, has modeled for the world what we know as nothing less than authoritarianism. And today is the climax of that behavior. That a week after a mass shooting plagued our community, the most direct action this legislative body takes, or should I say my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are taking, is to expel us for speaking about the issues of weapons of war on our streets. We called for you all to ban assault weapons, and you respond with an assault on democracy. That is why the nation is watching you today. And I say to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle that no matter what you vote, you have the votes, but you will not be victorious because there are generations of young people who see what is going on. There are young people that as you try and beat us down, they are rising up to take back this state from the extreme forces that have sought to take away the democratic process, the deliberative process. On last Thursday, when thousands gathered here, tried to silence members from talking about the issue of gun violence because they were afraid that a conversation would remind people that there is complicity of this body in what happened at Covenant Elementary School. The truth be told, colleagues, Covenant Elementary School was not the first mass shooting in Nashville. I represent a part of Nashville. And one of my constituents, who I don't know is in this chamber, Miss Brooks, lost her son, Akila, in that mass shooting that occurred at the Waffle House in Antioch. And after that massacre, we demanded that this body act, but once again, you turned a blind eye and closed your ears and put your head in the sand and refused to listen to the voice of the people. Refused to listen to the voice of the people. And so once again, it was in that spirit of a representative for people who have time after time after time been silenced that I approached this well. And now this body who showed the video of what occurred, no violence, no death threats, but simply saying that until we have action, there will be no peace or safety in our communities. And how do my colleagues respond? They respond with the most extreme measure of expulsion, which has only taken place 3 times in this House. Only 3 times in over 200 years have there been members of the House of Representatives expelled. The first case was in 1866. 6 members were expelled for refusing to confer citizenship on formerly enslaved persons. Then in 1980, 1 member was expelled for taking a $1,000 bribe to kill a bill on committee. In 2016, 1 member who many of you served with was expelled for 22 counts of sexual harassment. And now what you're doing with this prejudged expulsion resolution is saying that our actions were on par and equivalent with those egregious, some would say criminal activities that occurred. But the truth be told that when we approached this well, we broke no laws. We committed no felonies. We did not abuse the power of our office. We were simply trying to gain a voice for our constituents. And so this is not about expelling us as individuals. This is your attempt. This is your attempt. This is your attempt to expel the voice of the people from the people's house. And it will not be successful. It will not, look around, it will not be successful. Because your overreaction, your flexing of false power has awakened a generation of people who will let you know that your time is up. Let's talk about expulsion. For years, one of your colleagues who was an admitted child molester sat in this chamber. No expulsion. One member sits in this chamber who was found guilty of domestic violence. No expulsion. We had a former speaker sit in this chamber who is now under federal investigation. No expulsion. We have a member still under federal investigation. No expulsion. We had a member pee in another member's chair in this chamber. No expulsion. In fact, they're in leadership. In the governor's administration. And so once again, what you're saying to us, since you're trying to put us on trial, I'll say what you're really putting on trial is the state of Tennessee. What you're really showing for the world is holding up a mirror to a state that is going back to some dark, dark roots. A state in which the Ku Klux Klan was founded is now attempting another power grab by silencing the two youngest black representatives and one of the only women, Democratic women in this body. That's what this is about. Let us be real today. Let us be real today. Colleagues, there's another part of this. This extreme measure is a violation twofold, because it also is an attempt to silence and undo the will of over 200,000 Tennesseans whom the three of us represent. Your extreme measure is an attempt to subvert the will of voters who democratically elected us as representatives to speak and to passionately fight for them. When I entered into this chamber, many members said, "What will you do with this supermajority?" I said, "We will fight for you. We will not bow down simply because they have numbers, because we know that we are on the right side of history and that this body is not the ultimate say. That this is not a palace or a frat house or the Belmead Country Club, but that this is the people's house. And so when we came into this well to say, I see you, I'm with you, the people of the state, we are standing with you. We were saying, this is the people's house. And we will not bow down. Somebody said they were shouting on the floor. They were shouting on the floor. And it reminded me of a scripture from Genesis that said, the blood cried out. The blood cried out. That's what we were saying. There's a scripture that says, if we are silent, the stones will shout out. That's why we were shouting. No action, no peace. No action, no peace. No action, no peace. Let's talk about the power grab. This is unprecedented, not just for our state, but it's the reason why states across this nation are sending letters condemning this body. The White House is talking about what's happening in this body because what Tennessee is doing is a power grab of ousting 3 lawmakers, your colleagues, simply because you have the numbers to do it. If I didn't know this was happening to us, and I read the news, 3 opposition legislators expelled from the legislature, I would think that this was another nation. But no, it is Tennessee showing to the world that democracy is no more. That simply because of gerrymandered districts and voter suppression, you have stolen the people's house and think that you are ultimate authority. Whereas, during the House floor session on March 30th, 2023, Justin Jones of Davidson County, along with Gloria Johnson of Knox and Justin Pearson of Shelby County, did knowingly and intentionally bring disorder and dishonor to the House of Representatives through their individual and collective actions. Mr. Speaker, how can you bring dishonor to an already dishonorable House? How can you bring disorder to a House that is out of order, where the Speaker refuses to let representatives elected to speak for their people even be heard? How do you bring dishonor and disorder to a chamber that does not follow decorum, due process, constitutional rights, or the rules that they enact themselves? There is no equal application of law or rules as we see in this chamber, as we saw today. But it depends on who you know. It depends on if you have a certain letter by your name. It depends on if you have the supermajority. That does not sound like democracy to me. Many members counseled and said, perhaps you should come here and plead mercy. Perhaps you should come here and say, we throw ourselves at your mercy. That we should be ashamed of what we did and hold our heads down low. But what we did was the only logical thing to do after a session defined by extreme silencing of representatives of this body, a session defined by multiple moments in which the attempt to even bring up gun violence was immediately out of order.
That was your 20 minutes. Representative Garrett, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for your comments, Representative Jones. I've got several questions. And first, I'd like to know that the questions I'm going to ask today, will you be able to answer them specifically?
Representative Jones.
Yes.
Representative Garrett.
Isn't it true that approximately at 10:49 last Thursday, Representative Johnson, Representative Pearson, and you gathered at Representative Johnson's desk at approximately 10:49 last Thursday?
Representative Jones.
Yes, as we frequently gather at her desk, because it's in the corner of the room.
Representative Garrett.
You, Representative Johnson, and Representative Pearson then moved in unison to the well of the House, correct?
Representative Jones.
Are you saying at that time, or are you saying it in general?
Representative Garrett.
At that time, you moved in unison with Representative Johnson and Representative Pearson to the well, isn't that correct?
Representative Jones.
I'm not sure of the certain time, but we did walk together.
Representative Garrett.
At approximately 10:49 a.m. that day, on Thursday, you walked from Gloria Johnson's desk, Representative Johnson's desk, with Representative Pearson to the well, correct?
Representative Jones.
Thank you. This question has been asked and answered, but I'll answer it again. I'm not sure of the particular time. I want to be factual. Unlike this resolution, I want to make sure I have the facts correct. And so I cannot say the exact time, but I can say maybe around that time we walked over together.
Representative Garrett.
You, Representative Johnson, Representative Pearson, then began from the well shouting without recognition. Is that correct?
Representative Jones.
We began shouting after repeatedly being denied recognition.
Representative Garrett.
That, at that time that you approached the well, did you have recognition from the Speaker of the House to speak at the well?
Representative Jones.
And I also want to say that I just want to speak for myself. I don't want to speak for my other colleagues, and so I'll speak for myself that after repeatedly being denied, I did shout with the people in the chambers and offer solidarity to the people calling for an end to mass shootings and the proliferation of firearms in our community.
Representative Garrett.
So you and other members, the two members referenced before, gathered in the well, and the Speaker gavelled you out of order. Isn't that correct?
Representative Jones.
And I'm not going to speak for my colleagues, but I'll say that I entered this well and shouted with the young people pleading for their lives, calling for us to act on gun violence after repeatedly being denied recognition by Speaker Cameron Sexton.
Representative Garrett.
Then do you deny that you were in the well and Speaker Sexton gavelled you out of order?
Representative Jones.
From my recollection, the Speaker gavelled out of order, recess almost instantaneously when we approached this well. And as you said in that video, much of what occurred on that video that Justin Lafferty took was not while we were in session, but it was after the Speaker, within about 10 seconds, gavelled a recess. And so what we did in this well, the majority of the time we were in this well, was during a recess.
Representative Garrett.
But at the time you entered the well, we were in session. So my question specifically, which you said you would answer my question specifically, you approached the well, began to shout in the well, and the Speaker gavelled you out of order. Do you deny that the Speaker gavelled you out of order?
Representative Jones.
Thank you, Representative Garrett. I can't recall the number of times the Speaker has gavelled me out of order for simply doing my job as a representative, but on that day, the Speaker, in his normal fashion, chose to silence members as he had done throughout that day.
Representative Garrett.
And do you understand to speak from the well as you are speaking today, you were able to speak because Speaker Sexton recognized you in the well to be able to speak?
Representative Jones.
Thank you. I'm able to speak because the people of District 52 sent me here to speak. Speaker Sexton is not my constituent. Speaker Sexton is not a king. Speaker Sexton is not God, though he may want to be. He is my colleague. And so the people of District 52 sent me here to speak. And it's them who I ask for permission if I can speak and represent them.
Representative Garrett. Oh, we're out. Very good. Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we're here today because voices have been silenced. We're here today because we have a system that says we value a process. Yet in that process, particularly in our committees, voices are continuously silenced. Then we get to the floor, and the same is true. We don't get to fully vet bills. People can't represent their constituents' voices, and it has happened time and time again. This is not democracy. Democracy says your voice will be heard. I served 21 years in the military, and I do it again to protect democracy. I've traveled to other countries in the name of